Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. And before we get into today's episode, I actually have another announcement to make. I feel like lately all I've been doing is making new announcements, but the podcast officially has its fifth sponsor. Oh my gosh. Yes, another sponsor for the podcast. And this time it is Devin from Kaza Law. So that is Kaza Law. And actually, Devin was a guest on the show. His episode is number 103, and he is our fifth episode. So Kaza Law practices out of New York. You can definitely go ahead and check out Devin's episode. Again, that is 103, and you can check out their information. Their link is in the show notes and show description. And again, Devin is an immigration attorney. So thank you so much, Devin, for investing in the podcast and investing in the mission of changing the narrative of immigration one story at a time. And again, everyone remember, go ahead and continue to support the podcast by listening wherever you listen to podcasts or watching on YouTube. And you can also support the podcast with money by either making a one-time donation, by signing up for the Substack, which is $10 a month or $100 for the year, and you can listen to the episodes ad-free, or you can become a sponsor and have your business advertised on this show. All right. Thank you so much once again for your continued support, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and today I have a very special guest. I have Miss Jenny with us, and she is going to be talking about her experience growing up in Taiwan and her experience moving to the U.S., and her experience, with missionary work and refugee work. So thank you, Jenny, so much for coming on and being willing to share your story and your journey with us. If you could just please introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we can get started on your childhood in Taiwan.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Jenny Chau. I was born in Taiwan and I immigrated to Brooklyn in 1987, I believe. And with my parents and my brother, I was 12 years old. I came here for sixth grade, middle school. Perfect. I mean,
Wow.
to change everything.
Yeah.
So
What an interesting age to move.
yeah, definitely. When we were in Taiwan, we were like culturally Buddhist, so we were not Christian. And then it wasn't until several years later that me personally, and then the rest of my family actually became Christian. We experienced God's love that kind of transformed us completely as a family.
Oh, okay. Well, now you have to tell me about that.
Well, yeah, funny thing about most people coming to America is that, their dreams are always like to live a successful life. I want a good education.
Yes.
I went into IT as a career, um, did computer software programming consultant in New York City for a while. And, you kind of have that dream of that corner office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, during some years I was seeking God, I was wondering, just like, do I make up my own rules or do I follow a church's rule? Is it Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha? What is it, right? And so I started a conversation with God. And because my science experience, I kind of like knew there's a creator. I did not think it was chaos in this world and the nature. It was very orderly. It's beautiful. So, like every art that's beautiful, you kind of think there's a beautiful artist. And so
Yeah.
I started that conversation with God and kind of knocked on that door and never stopped. He's been talking to me and revealing things. And yeah, he is my first love.
That is so beautiful. And so how were you able to share that with your family? And I don't want to say convert them, but yeah, convert them.
They had their own experience. I
Oh,
think,
okay, okay.
my brother had his own experience, my mom, my they all had a separate experience of encountering God, and we're all very different. So it's
Aw.
kind of very God's very personal,
Oh
cookie
my
cutters.
goodness, yes. Yes, he is. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, and, that wasn't part of the talk that we had talked about, but since you mentioned, I'm like, "Wait, now I have to know." I love hearing, different different parts of people's stories, so that was very intriguing to me, so thank you for sharing that. And so tell us, what do you remember about Taiwan?
Oh, what do I remember? Well, it was 12 years. I was born there
Mhm.
and grew up there, till 12 years. I had lots of aunts and uncles. On
Aw.
weekends, they would all just come over. We would make dumpling all day and watch really bad Chinese drama on cassette tape for, like, hours on end. Uh, My grandma was there, and she spoils me. She handmades my clothes. I remember my mom was a professor in a university and she taught theater. So I remember hanging out in the campus, like in the pond. I was like playing with water and kids there. And I also remember falling asleep in theaters when my mom was like judging performance at night. And so, yeah, just great childhood, great memories. Taiwan's an island, so it's very kind of friendly, like Puerto Rico. So everybody's like just really friendly, hospitable, generous, kind. Yeah, I think all island people are kind of like,
Yeah. In some way, yes. And I know you were 12 and a child, so you had no say in the decision, but do you know what events actually led your family to leave?
yeah. My mom basically wanted to advance her career. She wanted to become like a chairman of that department. So she wanted to come to US and get a master's degree and then return back to Taiwan to continue. But during that time, my mom was visiting. So she came here by herself for one
Oh.
semester, and she, visited the Met, the museum in New York City, and she during that time, she saw a group of kids on the field trip, and they were kind of like, having fun, laughing, and then they were sketching this, like, Egyptian exhibit with, architectural structures and stuff like that, and my mom was so moved, and she was so inspired and really dreamed that one day her kids, me and my brother will be able to be educated here and experience this richness of learning that's not just, off a book in the classroom, but an experiential learning.
Mm.
So that was her, hope, that was her dream. I wasn't doing very well in the education system in Taiwan, so she was probably kind of like, "Girl, you need help."
Oh, no. Oh my goodness. So straight from Taiwan to New York. Oh my goodness. Do you remember any, if you experienced, I mean, you probably did, but, any cultural shocks? Do you remember, like, when you guys first moved here? Because 'Cause I'm thinking of an island, like how you mentioned, like, Puerto Rico, and then, like, New York, the city, buildings and everything, so how was that for you?
Oh, man. I mean, it cannot be the furthest extreme, really.
Yeah.
In Taiwan, I was living kind of like outskirts of a city, but easy commute to the campus. So it was like a cluster of 50 houses surrounded by rice fields and
Mm.
waterfalls, right? And my neighbors all know each other. We just walk into each other's doors. Nobody locked their door. I just go see my friend, just like walk in their house, right? I don't call ahead of time. I don't really, there's no texting obviously back then. So it was just very communal experience. And then ah Brooklyn in the 80s was not the trendy Brooklyn of today, right?
Oh.
Brooklyn, Flatbush in the 80s. There was sirens, there was fire truck. It was very noisy. It was a very diverse environment. It was Italians, Pakistanis, Puerto Ricans, Black Americans. And, but I had a neighbor, who rented above us. They were an American family. who, it was like father, mother, and 2 daughters. And, they were very American in the sense of so we didn't speak I didn't speak English back then, so I'm only picking up, um, other nuances. So, like, their voice, when they say hello, it's very loud and high pitched. It would be like, "Oh," it's like it's really, voluminous and it goes up and down, and so I was just kind of like, "Wow, okay," you know? And, but they invite us to their home, they share milk and cookies, and they're sweetest people. Every Christmas, I still remember, and they're not rich because we're renting cheap apartments, and they're like our neighbor, and they would purchase and wrap this little Christmas present in this, like, wrapping paper, which I'd never received in one, we're not Christians, we didn't celebrate Christmas in Taiwan, and it's always, always, every year, a little purse from Macy's.
Mm.
So, the daughter, Miss Robin, she would always just, give me that gift, and she helped me with grammar during school and, like, help my parents with other, like, logistics stuff in America, and they really just was simple people, they're friendly, they're just loving neighbors. These 2 daughters, they were never married, and so, really, Miss Robin is our forever family. Like, she's
Yeah,
part of my family here. She loved us so well, even though we barely spoke English and really just didn't understand anything.
yeah. And are you still in contact with her?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh my goodness, that's amazing. And so, okay, you moved to New York. So how was that? How long did you live in New York?
I lived in New York all the way till, even I was married till I became a missionary, yeah. I
No.
went to college in New York, I was a software consultant in New York City, Manhattan, moved from Brooklyn after I got married, I moved from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and I even had my first child in New York.
Mm,
Or
okay. So you met your husband in Brooklyn then?
he is a friend of, his brother, so I met him in Bear Mountain, so it's like
Oh.
upstate New York. I had this, like, part-time job in this summer. So that's where I met my friend who is a coworker, and so years later, we hung out when we started working, and that's how I met her brother and married
Oh.
her brother, which,
And married her brother.
I always thought is sketchy. What a risk. I'm risking my friendship first, but it worked out.
Aw, look at
You know?
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost 25 years marriage and 4 kids later, it's alright. Give
4
it a try.
kids, nice. Alright. Okay, so you mentioned missionary work. Tell us a little bit about that. So that was after college?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like second career. After college, I worked as a software consultant in New York a little bit, but, we were part of a church, and we had a college group, and so in that college group, we were, my husband and I were just kinda, like, loving on these college students. We hung out together. We went to also did also, well, like, whitewater rafting, we did all sorts of fun things together, and then my husband kind of thought, "Oh, let's go, join this, conference, this, like, Christian conference for college students." And it was back then by, their name used to be Campus Crusade for Christ, Crew now that is their name. And so we took them, and many of them, continue on with we went back to this conference for several years just as a church group, and, many of them just, joined their summer mission trips and helped out in different ways, and we really helped them grow in their faith. Um, so at one point, the staff during conference was so one year I showed up with a newborn baby,
Hmm.
and the staff was like, "Wow, you might as well become a staff." And we were like, "What do you mean? I don't even know what that means." And so, through that experience, God used Romans 12 saying, calling us to kind of leave behind the things of this world and to pursue Him. So, we heard God's calling, clear calling, which is very different when you are married. Me and my husband are opposite character, but for us
Mm,
to hear the same message, it's
yeah.
like almost never. We always have different opinions.
Heard it clear as day. Oh my goodness. So you and I connected volunteering for Bethany Christian Services, specifically for the refugee resettlement program. So tell us about your experience volunteering with them and why was that work important to you?
Yeah, I think a little backstory is that during COVID and, we're all locked down, I kind of reflected about my life, about my parents' life of immigrant, and then even further about my grandmother's life. My grandmother was from China, and she she during World War II she escaped and was kind of like a refugee and went to Taiwan. And during that time, all her relatives went different ways. Because they're merchant class. And so the communists has came to their location and really um, kind of killed many relatives. And so they all knew they're coming back and everybody should leave before that. But my grandmother was pregnant with my
Mm,
mom. And so she was like, I'm due any day. I'm going to just have the kid and then go. So my grandmother, once my mom was born, took my mom and, her father-in-law to go to Taiwan to look for, my grandfather. So, again, there's no cell phone, no internet. It was an incredible journey. Um, and so as I reflect that, it moved my heart about refugee, about people who are forced to leave
yeah.
home, their culture, their country, their family, to leave everything.
Hi, Heidi here. Thank you so much for listening and supporting my podcast, but most importantly, the mission. If you would like to further support this podcast, there are a few ways you can do that. You can sign up for the newsletter. You'll receive the episodes straight to your inbox every time they drop. The link is in the show notes and the show description. You can subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel. And lastly, you can donate money. That link is also in the show notes and show description. If you would like to sponsor an episode or promote your business on this show, send me an email at Heidi@HeidiDelacruz.com. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the episode.
So the opportunity came and I started researching about how to help refugees here in our city. And so I got connected with Bethany Christian Services, and then I also got connected with Lutheran Services. And it's just been delightful to kind of meet these refugees. And it's all the way back to that day when I came and I could not communicate with anybody. Like
Yeah.
there's language barrier between me and all the refugee, and it is so frustrating. There's so much I want to ask, so much I want to hear, and so much I want to say. But at the same time, I knew like God's, God will hold these families and have their journey and be with them throughout the way.
Yeah.
I always looked at their kids. I was just like, through Google Translate, I'm like, I was 12 when I was here. You're gonna be okay.
Oh, oh, that is so sweet.
So yeah.
Yeah. Um, so where at the time of this recording, because obviously I record, months in advance. So at the time of this recording, unfortunately, the program is completely stopped. Funding has stopped, and that has affected. Is the 9 families here? Because I keep seeing different numbers online. So I saw like 4,000 families, and I think that's all world or not worldwide. Sorry. I think the 4,000 number is families that had just recently resettled to the US right before the new administration came in and paused the program. And then I believe it was 9 families here locally that had just moved. Am I saying that accurately?
Yeah, so I just knew about Orlando, that through Bethany, there's about there's about a dozen or 2 family that came in January
Yeah,
before the inauguration. And then, so they've been here, like, couple of weeks. And then after the first week of President Trump's, in office and the executive order of stopping all immigrant refugee work, which includes this part that we're doing are legal refugees. They come through
yes.
UNHCR, which is the UN Refugee Agency. And they really jump through a lot of hoops, right? It takes 8 government agencies, 5 separate security database, 6 background checks, and 2 in-person interviews.
Yeah,
You don't go through that easily when you are already, fleeing from, an unsafe place. So, so it's very few people get through this process, and the ones that are here, by, um and basically by that first week, our social worker with Bethany was ordered to stop her work.
yeah, I saw that.
So us as volunteers was like, well, these refugees, have no they would not have next week grocery.
Yep,
They would not they just been here. They don't have a job yet. How are they going to pay rent? Utility bill. They don't even know how to register their kids for school. So many things they need help with. And so there's a group of great Orlando volunteers who just moved to step in. And there were donations of grocery carts. They were people going over to help them to set up their electric bills, to help them register kids for school, and even to apply for jobs. So it was difficult circumstance, but my heart is also warmed by just the volume of people who responded here. And
yeah,
yeah, we do care. They should not be dropped. We people at locally in Orlando can do something about this. It is
yeah, yeah. I just finished writing an article about what the refugee program is, the process that refugees go through to be able to come to the US, and not even just the US. Like, there's other countries that accept refugees, and when I was looking at the numbers, the United States is not even in the top 10 that actually accepts, like, not even in the top 10 of the amount of refugees that we accept. We're not even there. So, like, we're not a leading country that accepts refugees. So I shared those numbers in the article, and then I also shared in the article why I believe the program stopped. And I remember during the elections, a lot of misinformation going around about the program, and immigrant terms or immigration terms used interchangeably, which were used incorrectly. So, for example, we know that a lot of people like to use the dehumanizing term as illegals or illegal aliens, and when they're using those terms, it's usually for people who are undocumented, right? Who either came into the US, not through a legal unlawfully, right? So they didn't come to a point of entry, or they had a visa and they overstayed. Those are typically the 2 ways that people become undocumented. So, the misinformation that was being spread was that undocumented people were getting houses, were getting jobs, were getting utility, like, all this government, quote, unquote, "government assistance" that was taking away from US citizens or, US, veterans, is what they were saying, and all that information was incorrect. And I remember reading an article and watching a video, and it was a video based out of Maryland, and they were like, "Oh, they just built this, apartment complex to house, illegals and to pay their rent for 2 months, and, U.S. citizens can apply, but they have to pay, full rent. They had to pay for their own food and all this other stuff. And then they interviewed a representative of who was helping, right? And it was from a Catholic charity church or organization, and she mentioned it was refugees. Like, they had approved 150 families, refugees that, they went through the process that you were saying, they were already vetted, and they were, helping them get set up. And so, again, the reporter went back saying like, "Oh, there's 150 more illegals coming to take," and it's like, "No, like, this is not what is happening. This is not what's going on." And so, unfortunately, when I read the executive order, that's really much what it said. It said that, we had a high number of people coming. The United States can't sustain the amount of people, and that it's taking away from US citizens. So it's like that unfortunately is inaccurate. That's not what's going on. And so I shared that article in my article, or the link to that article in my article, because it's like we really have to be careful, one, with terminology, and we really have to be careful with, especially when we don't know the process of what's going on, maybe try to like figure out the truth, maybe talk to somebody who knows or who's in there. So when I heard the video, the representative talking, I was like, that sounds a lot like Bethany's resettlement program, because I was like, I've been with the volunteers. That's what they do. They help with the apartment setup. They help them find jobs. They help them with the school enrollment. But these are vetted refugees. Like, these are people who go through years of vetting, background checks, a process. And a lot of times it's not even to the US that they come. They go to different countries. So all that to say is, unfortunately, there's been a lot of misinformation about that program, which has caused now to be a halt. People have lost their jobs, and there's refugees that are like left up in the air who, like you said, they barely had any food. They barely had, didn't know how they were going to pay the rent. But seeing how God works and people come together in those moments of need is really, really beautiful. It also reminds me of when I was just in El Paso, in Mexico, learning about the borderlands. And so I was getting a lot of the messages and the threads when I was there. And when the big influx of immigrants from Venezuela happened in 2022, they were talking about that in Juarez. They were like, we had so many people were sleeping in the streets and anything. And the rep was like, it was just so beautiful to see the city of Juarez step up and provide shelter, provide food, provide donations and things like that when this crisis was happening. So we see God in the midst of chaos. Like, he is there with us, he is there providing for us and for the people in need, and it's very beautiful to see. Now, at the time of this, like when this releases, we don't know what's gonna happen, if it will, be brought back. But as we were talking before we recorded, you had mentioned that Bethany right now no longer has that program here in Orlando. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So, refugee, the term, is very important to clarify that they are people who has proven need physical protection, or they have survived violence and torture, or they are women and girls at risk. So these are
Yeah.
very defined terms that qualify to be a refugee, and they actually have to prove and show that. And
Yeah.
so some of the people we met here are Christians who were being persecuted. I
Yep.
know this family, he had a soccer ministry, but it was kind of again, he was helping these teenager boys and was against these teenager boys joining a criminal gang. And so he was really being persecuted from town to town and being harassed. So some of these programs are helping Christians who are fleeing for their lives. And then there are people who actually just get tortured because they're a minority group, and that's
Yeah.
just wrong. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Terminology matters. Clarity of information process matters. They're not all in the same bucket. It's very different.
Yeah. And it was one of the legal pathways to come to the US, which I hear a lot of people what, anti-immigration rhetoric that I hear is like, "Oh, do it the right way, get in line," kinda thing, and it's like, this was a legal pathway for people who are being persecuted, people who are fleeing violence to come and seek safety in the US, and that was just literally snatched away from them, from the new administration, unfortunately. So we're gonna continue praying. There's different ways that people can, get involved, donate to, organizations, which I can link in the show notes. They can call the representatives, and I can link that website to find the representative as well. And yeah, so there's different ways. So your reason to volunteer for with Bethany was mostly because of your grandma's story, so it was something very, very close to your heart. So now that the program is gone, unfortunately, what is Jenny up to today?
Well, I don't think I will stop with refugees because the services has ended. These agency only help for 3 months. So I know personally the immigration or the refugee process of settling or being part of this new country takes more than 3 months,
Yes, it does.
takes years. And
Mhm.
so I think I'm committed to continue to journey with these people, to be their aunties, to
Oh,
be their Miss Robins, to help their kids in their journey of going to college, applying for college, to help them figure out it's tax season soon. Like some of them never heard such a thing,
yes.
What does that mean? So my commitment is to continue with them. My other side thing is that I am a spiritual director. So just as I have taken such an interesting journey from culturally Buddhist background to Christianity and journey with so many college students and young adults, I continue to be kind of a spiritual companion to many as they seek to discern transitions of their lives. What is God doing in their heart and their soul, and discovering different parts of their story. So I have the privilege often to join many people in that journey. So,
Oh,
so that's
Jenny, I love your heart. Oh my goodness. I love the work that you're doing and the work that you continue to do because you're right. Even though the program is stopped right now, these refugees still need volunteers. They still need our help and everything. So I love your heart for helping. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us and your story. And to wrap this up, I love asking my guests because it's usually very different for everyone, just like God. God is very personal, like you said earlier. So I feel like this question is very personal. So, Jenny, what does the American dream mean to you?
okay. I gave it thought, and and I think it has evolved. So I don't know how many people know this thing called the second mountain. So okay, first mountain is probably more of my initial American dream, where like normal people in our culture, kind of like you want to be successful, you want to have the best education, you want to get invited into right social circles and experience personal happiness. And you want the normal stuff like the nice house, the nice family, the pet, the vacation, the friends, right? The food and all the Instagram picture out there, right? So that's really the first mountain. And that was kind of initially, what I was aiming for. But then, what they normally set in the journey of people in life is just like, and many people stay there, but once you get there, you kind of realize it's not all that meant to be. It doesn't actually fully satisfy me in my heart longings. And then slowly, you look further out and wondering, what now? What else? And so then it transitions to um the second mountain is what some people call it. Um in this second mountain you're free from the prison of self. You go from me to we. Okay? So in the second mountain people they desire to be transformed. They have desire to live intimately in relationship with others to make a difference in the world. They're driven by belonging, generosity. They experience bright sadness and sober happiness. They are community builders and weavers and sharing in the kind of the ethos that puts relationship over yourself. And so for me, my American dream is now more of that I long to be more selfless, to love other well, to build communities, to build relationships. Not about things I get or achievements, but to dream, even for myself and my kids, like the Bible said, to really just do justly, to love mercy, loving kindness, and just to walk humbly with God.
Yeah.
I don't need to be famous. I don't need to be rich. I don't want to be controlling. I want to be a loving kindness, humble presence to God and to my neighbors.
That was so beautiful. Thank you for
I,
that.
yeah. And that is my same hope, actually, my dream for America.
Mm,
I pray that America will will let go of this false self of grasping of power, dominance, success, but really to return to his first love, to be loving kindness, to experience grace and mercy from God, and also to love their neighbors. And
yeah.
it could be their country, other countries in Canada, Mexico, other countries. It could also just be the neighbor next door, upstairs and downstairs. And that's my dream for America.
Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your heart again with us. And yeah, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for this. So excited to have this episode air. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for all your storytelling. It is a beautiful tapestry. I love it. I listen to it weekly. So,
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. That just made my heart so happy. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Mommy Podcast.